Hi, Peter. How are you?
Excellent, my friend. How are
So
you?
good to see you, man.
You too, buddy. It's been too long.
It's been a while. It's been a
Yeah,
while. And since I've seen you,
yeah,
you've become a rock star. I'm
yeah. You don't
so
want to hear me sing.
but listen, this is the deal.
Yeah, tell me.
You know, when I see people like you talking about helping other people free their mind,
Yeah,
the first thing I ask myself is, who is he to talk about this, right?
yeah. Good
Is he
question.
is his mind free, right?
Uh-huh.
So then I start observing, and I watch like a hawk,
Yes, you
and I
do.
watched you like a hawk, and I must say, I'm not only impressed because I think that you're the real deal, but I'm really happy because somebody that really lives in the way that he teaches is always inspiring to me, and being a friend even double.
Well, my friend, that's really touches my heart. That is I think it's probably the greatest compliment you could give me, is one, to see me for who I am, and two, to acknowledge that I'm really, one, very passionate about what I do, but two, truly recognize the power of these teachings for people. I see it every day. I'm blessed to work with people and witness their awakening, and you're a dear friend and an inspiring human being with a great intellect, and so to get that reflection from you is it's quite an endorsement. So thank you very
and
much.
and 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 in a way, I'm a convert, because when I first saw you at the first in group health, right,
Yeah,
you are so secure and so confident, and then you just say it as it is, that for those who don't know you and don't have that 100% polished radar, it could become a little bit as cocky, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So then I said,
yeah.
then my mind is, I'm gonna detect the bullshit, right? And I never did. Plus, I've been watching you and all your Instagram lives and the things that you put out, and when I hear you, I hear two things. On one hand, it's like poetry. You're so articulate, and you bring in, Advaita Vedanta and
Mhm.
poetry, and so it is like poetry, or like song, right? So I see you as an artist, but
Yeah.
on the other hand, I've witnessed what you can do to a crowd, and of course on Instagram Live and everything. You people just like, they have this healing experience. So in a way, I also see you as a healer. Which one do
Yeah.
you identify yourself more, the artist or the healer?
I'd say it's, I like the title of the poetic healer. How about that? It's both, right? So for me, I really feel what I do embody, what you recognize. And, I love that we've gotten to know each other through our beautiful family at Goop. And I do recognize that confidence, when it's misunderstood or it's misinterpreted, can sometimes come across as a little intimidating for people. But once you get to know it, and once you start to see the authenticity, the fact that I'm, by my own declaration, one of the most caring people you'll ever meet, it's just I'm very self-assured, then you recognize, wow, this is somebody who has just found comfort in his own skin, but is equally wanting to truly help people. So that's the healer part, but it just so happens that I love language. I love the power of words, and that's sort of more the poetry. Like, even the way I write, I would assert, it's even more profound than the way I speak, and I love speaking, So the understanding of language itself, and the potency of words, and how the way we speak generates our reality, that is the poetic side. But by virtue of understanding it, it becomes a healing process, right? If somebody's living in the language construct of I'm not enough, then the healing is not available, because they're in a prison of self-conflict. But the
Which, which,
words, as
which,
I
by the
say,
way, is the same that happens with medicines in the body.
of
Sometimes
course,
the consciousness doesn't even let them do the benefit that they would be doing.
Yes, and that's why, you know, my background, as I think you know, was also as an Ayurvedic practitioner. I was a trainer for many years. I started with the physical body and how to heal, but I kept coming up against this invisible wall, right? Which is that if somebody's living in a state of sympathetic survival, like fight or flight or freeze all the time, then the cascade into their physiology is such that the body can't constantly repair because the mind is too busy looking out for potential threat, right? So we're dumping cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, the sleep patterns aren't very good. The digestion of food is not complete, you know, so the ability for the body to rejuvenate, it's physics. It can't do it. So you could have an organic chef, you could, you know, have the best trainer in the world taking care of your physicality, but if your internal terrain is in this constant state of unrest, then it does, you know, it's going to lead to disease. So that's why I love the power of the two.
So this brings me to an interesting question.
Yeah.
At least interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you talk about the mind, you are the mind architect, right?
Yeah.
And when you talk about fight or flight, you always do this, you know, I've studied you. And you point to your head. And then when you talk about fight or flight, you also point to your head. And I understand where you're coming from. It's like the interpretation of this head of a situation that you rather not be in, so the resistance is created, so then the fight or flight, emotional, mental, right?
Yeah.
But the mind is not only here. We know that every cell in your body has a bit of the mind, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And as a species, we are a species that, since we withdrew ourselves from nature and natural conditions, just by the way we live and with the way we sleep and the things we eat and the situations we're confronted with, our bodies are always in this state of fight or flight to a certain extent.
Yes. Yes.
Now, if the mind is in every cell, because you can calm the cells by doing mind architecture.
Yeah.
But how does the cells affect the mind, and what can you do about it other than, of course, eating right and detoxifying and repairing your gut and everything, right?
No, I mean, it's a two-way street for sure, right? Like if we do a workout, if we sit in an infrared sauna, if we get a really good night's sleep, which we could say are all on the physical therapies and modalities, then psychologically there's an influence too, where we feel brighter, we feel more alert, we feel like we can focus better, right? So I just assert that in terms of the actual hierarchy, it is the power of perception that really is influencing our physiology, right? Like now, it does go both ways, for sure. But if there is, you know, if you go one way, which is the highway, and one way is a small side street, you know, I think the highway is the mind to the body, right? So that's why, look,
mind over body.
Mind over matter, and it really is why I'm so passionate about what I do, because people work hard. They work hard at their job, at their workouts, at trying to, you know, eat the right food. People are driven by wanting to take care of themselves. But if they don't know in the deep recesses of their subconscious, this constant self-deprecating dialogue that leaves them in a state of unrest, then at best, what they're doing physically is going to be transitory, right? And I'm not saying that they should not do it, but it doesn't have the depth of impact that we want to have, that you can have once your mind is at peace, right? So, you know, just the digestion process, right? If you're in sympathetic mode, then digestion is not a priority. Even the resources of how the blood is distributed around our physiology is to the muscles, to the brain, to the eyes. The pupils dilate, sorry. And so the digestion process is secondary, tertiary. It's not important. So if somebody, even unbeknownst to themselves, is in a mild state of anxiety, which becomes their normal, so they don't even know it, then they could be eating great food, but the process of digestion and metabolism is already compromised, right? And so that's why I'm so passionate about helping people, because they do all the great external actions, but with a mindset that doesn't get all of the benefit. So
people have come to you with an already well-functioning body, and then it's a gunpowder, right?
It is like flipping a switch. Like it is a different paradigm. It's not the one you're in that's improved. That's how most people live their life, on a linear track, right? This natural progression where I want to get better, I hope to improve. But no, it's what I call a vertical ascension. It's not a linear progression. You take somebody to a different frequency of understanding, then everything on that matter plane, whether it be their body, their finances, their home, has to reach a new frequency with the new perception. Right.
And
so it's not about
when you work with people one-on-one, how much of your Ayurveda and your personal training experience and tips do you use?
It depends on the individual. You know, I like to incorporate it to a certain degree with everybody, but you know, unless you deal with what somebody's perception of themselves is first, they could do all of the great modalities externally. So it's not a focus. When I work with people over an extended period of time, for sure, because now they find, wow, I've never felt this free in my life. This is insane. Like all of the images I had of like, I was not enough, or I was a failure, or I wasn't going to be okay, or my parents didn't like me. You know, all the normal human dialogues. Once that's reconciled and dissipated, now they get to explore literally a new paradigm, a new world, where we can integrate Ayurveda, different forms of training, different sort of sleep hygiene, so that they can maximize their physicality now as well. That's when it becomes really exciting, because it's like you kind of go to a different planet that's got all of these new rides that you can go on, right? So that's why.
And you look healthy. Your skin is shining. You got the glow. Is this genetics, or do you pay attention and you have your practices?
I have a very, very, very well thought out, consciously created practice for myself. I'm not a young guy, and I could easily look terrible if I didn't do the things that I do. So, you know, there's an interesting thing in epigenetics. I'm sure you're familiar with Bruce Lipton. And I remember saying,
dear friend of mine.
So he's amazing, right? So if you look at the way that our lifestyle, diet, and particularly mindset can turn on different proteins in our genome to then express who we are in different ways. I remember seeing once, it was like, there's 2,800 different versions of you, right? And it was just fascinating. It's like, wow, you know, to take Alejandro and look, there's 2,800 different versions of you, depending on, you know, if one end you just drank Jack Daniels all day and you ate pizza and you stayed up all night and you smoked cigarettes. That would be one version, versus probably more where you are, which is, you know, you have a nice sadhana, you have a good practice, you eat well, you meditate, and then all the different variations in between. So for me, you know, I mean, look, I make my own moisturizer, I make sugar scrubs, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, so I take herbs for myself. I'm very diligent with my workouts. I have a great sleep routine.
You play ping pong.
Ping pong is a serious precursor to longevity.
Dude, you are good too.
Thank you. It's actually interesting. It's great for neuroplasticity because it's such a quick reaction time. That's why I took it up originally. It's because I wanted to continually give my brain a workout. You know, it's one thing to work out your body.
You have to be fully present.
Yeah.
Because the ball goes so fast, you know.
And sharp, right? So it keeps reflexes very quick, and my ability to adapt and to just to be able to assess what's going on quite rapid.
It's the best meditation. You know, I've had my own journey through depression and repetitive negative thinking, and that the effect that has on life and your body and your choices and in my path, I didn't know what to do at the beginning. Initially, I went to a psychiatrist. They gave me an antidepressant. Then I started studying for myself and looking for the explanation. I wanted to understand what you explain, right?
Yeah.
And in the path, I came across the positive thinking movement, right?
Right.
And I tried it, and every time I caught myself, you know, I would force a positive thought there, right?
Yeah.
And kind of shove it in, but it was a lot of work, and it was the only thing that I could do, because the moment I got distracted to do something else, negative thoughts popped in, right? So I thought it was kind of useless. It was, you know, the negative thinking, the positive thinking, they're both sides of the same coin.
Yeah. I had a great, I think you saw some of it. I did a live with Aggie yesterday, which was incredible. And we got so blown up. I've never seen so many, you know, people mentioning me in stories ever on Instagram. And it was so sweet. But she had a very similar kind of point and question. She's like, how do I change my negative self-talk? I said, you don't have to. First of all, it's automated. Your subconscious is giving rise to the conversations that you're hearing, the narratives. What you have to become better at is listening. It's not about changing the way you talk. It's about becoming a better listener, right? So any parent knows that they listen to a child have a tantrum, get upset, express some kind of fear, but they listen. They don't become affected by it, right? They don't go, oh my gosh, you know, their 3-year-old is like so scared. The parent doesn't then just become scared, right? Because they hold a space, they embrace, they are the security blanket for the child. So likewise for us, we want to develop discernment and our ability to listen to the narratives that are, I'm not going to be okay. What's going to happen with the whole COVID thing? Am I going to be sick? Am I not going to have money? These are all legitimate conversations, but percolating up from the deep-seated limitations and insecurities of the subconscious. If you learn to listen to that dialogue like it is the voice of a child, because it really is, you can make space for it. You don't, it is, as I said yesterday, it's a discerning and intelligent mind that can entertain thoughts without believing them. And that's where we create space. So even for me, people ask me, I did a beautiful conference call for my online course last Sunday, which was so fun. And people post questions. And one of them was like, are you just always free? You know, or are you still working on stuff? And so I made a joke about it. I said, yeah, of course I'm free. I'm the mind architect. And I said, no, I'm human. I'm a work in progress. But the difference is, even when my little boy, my little ego, which had fears of loss and not being good enough like everybody, when those thoughts percolate, I have a capacity to pay attention and listen, but not be affected by them. To make space, which is love. That is really love of our own narrative.
Now, I heard you say that you are a student of Advaita Vedanta
yes.
and other philosophies, right? I studied Kashmir Shaivism. I actually lived in a monastery in India, right? From that lineage. And one of the main concepts that I, you know, live by or perceive the world and my functioning as is that thoughts are constantly being produced. I haven't discovered where they are produced yet within, but I can see them, right? I can hear them, or whatever you want to call it, right? And they just pop in. And in these philosophies, they talk about them as being clouds. And if instead of one identifying oneself with the thought and then thinking that that is you, and you have to kind of put your attention somewhere else in the present and let those clouds just pass, you know? And so a friend of mine used to say, when you see a negative thought that's telling you how stupid you are, or just say, thank you for sharing, and don't even listen to him. Not listen to him like a kid. Don't even listen. Just completely detach yourself and understand that that's just noise. How do you reconcile what you just explained to me with that kind of concept, if that's how you understand it?
No, I think it depends on the individual. For some people, I think it's more profound for them to be able to make space. I personally think that real love and real power and real freedom, which I would say are my products, right? Those are the things that I'm, quote unquote, bringing people. True freedom, true peace, a sense of real love. Love is the container for all of it, right? So meaning when a thought, and I don't know if I'd say it's a negative thought, it's a thought. It might have a little bit of a negative connotation. It's some sort of negation. It's maybe for a future that we don't want. But negative and positive belong to the world of duality. You can't have one without the other. Up and down, right and wrong, blah, blah, blah. Male, female, yin, yang, right? They're all part of the construct that is this dimension that we're in. You can't, it's unavoidable. When people say something like, oh my gosh, you know, anything's possible. And they're all like, you know, Pollyanna-ish and like these yogis, no offense to yogis, I love yogis, but like as a stereotype, like, oh, anything's possible. I will jokingly say, yes, you could get cancer tomorrow. Now, of course, that hits them like, wait, what? I'm like, well, you said anything. Oh, well, no, that's not what I meant. Oh, you mean good things are possible, right? You see, so what happens is that's only one half of the equation. That's not freedom. That is manipulation where you're holding the pendulum to one side, hoping that everything goes well. But that's exhausting. A truly powerful human being is somebody who can be with all of it. So to come back to your point, I prefer in my practice with people to get somebody to a space where they are so big in their beingness, in their bandwidth, that regardless of the thought, regardless of the commentary that comes to them, regardless of the circumstance, good or bad, a compliment, a criticism, they maintain their equanimity, they maintain their peace. That to me is true freedom. That to me is true power. That's what I'm committed to, because then it all becomes just part of the world of happening. It's what's occurring in the world. And my favorite question to myself in my own life is, can I be with this? Right? Whatever's happening, can I be with it? When we can't be with something, that's when we get triggered. We get upset, we get sad, we get angry, we get depressed, we withdraw. All of those behavioral adaptations are basically the brain saying, I don't know how to handle this situation and I'm going to go into some survival pattern. That's not freedom. It's not wrong, it's human, but I want to bring people to a place where they're so immensely powerful, they're so immensely free, that even with the likes of COVID and corruption and conspiracies and loss of job and loss of loved ones, I'm not saying any of it's ideal, but we can maintain freedom, power, and a sense of love and trust despite circumstance. That's a powerful human being.
So I love just listening to you, because you're eloquent and you can talk and explain ideas that it would take me, if I even got there, the whole afternoon sitting down and really and looking at books. Right. But the thing is this: once the Instagram live is finished, and I wanna, and let's say I had a friend of mine and I wanted to explain exactly what you said, I wouldn't be able to, right?
Yes.
So in your explanations, there is the possibility of freedom. But if somebody doesn't actually own the explanations, and they come out easily. So what do you do with people? When you work with them, is it mostly rethinking, or there are other practices that you use as tools to unlearn the thoughts, or let these ones sink in a more profound way? Because 5 minutes from now, I'm going to have to look at this again to go, because now it makes perfect sense and I'm excited, but then it's gone.
Then the phone goes blank and it's like, now what? So it's a great question and I get it a lot. So really the work is about reverse engineering and revealing. It's about an inquiry process, right? We want to get to root cause, like your work with physiology, right? Like look at the Western medicine system, right? Or the healthcare system, which is not a healthcare system. It is a sick care system. The system is set up to take care of disease. That's got nothing to do with vitality, right? That's no slight on all of these wonderful doctors and nurses who are beautiful, wanting to help. But the system itself is corrupt, right? Because it's a business, it wants to make money. So people just need to understand what they're dealing with.
Which, by the way, I don't even blame the system. I think the system is just a reflection of the state of consciousness of humanity at this time.
Of course, it's us always trying to fix things, which is leading to my point about your question, which is it's not wrong, it just doesn't work, right? It's got nothing to do with health. It's about managing disease and selling drugs. Not wrong, it's a business, right? They want to make money. So when it comes to the same process of trying to fix something wrong, like you said earlier, well, when I have a negative thought, what do? Well, we got to look at the root cause. That is symptomatic, right? And certainly if we have a reaction to something, if we get upset by what someone said, or we get upset by the circumstances that are unveiling, then we want to understand why. That's the inquiry work that I do. What is the deep-seated subconscious pattern that's being triggered, right? So I assert in my work and all my research that there are 10 fundamental constraints that we all live within, and maybe we'll go through 1 or 2 today. But what happens is if you have an external reaction to something, say you got upset by a spouse or a family member or a boss or whatever, what it's revealing is one of these programmed primal survival patterns. So let's take an example. One that everyone can relate to is that I'm not enough, right? It's I'm not pretty enough, young enough, fit enough. rich enough, something I'm not enough. It's a very universal human like pattern that everyone can relate to. So what might happen is, you've obviously transcended it. So we could be in any mundane, everyday situation where we're at the office and somebody gets a raise or they get a promotion, or you're in a relationship and your partner decides that they're going to go and start dating somebody else. Like, these things are happening by the millions every day, right? And I'm not saying they're fun, but what happens is if that person gets upset, it could be triggering the deep-seated code of, wow, they went to go with somebody else. That means I'm not enough. Or that person got a promotion, I didn't. I'm not good enough in the workplace, right? Do you see? That's what's being triggered. So then what we want to do is we want to investigate the validity and the actual truth of that construct. So just because someone you're dating starts dating somebody else instead of you, does that mean that who you are is not enough? Now, it might feel like that, but it's not a truth. It means that they started dating somebody else. So it's actually a gift. And one of my favorite quotes to people, I say, life will present you with circumstances and people to reveal where you're not free. What does that mean? Whenever you get triggered, it is life, the bigger intelligence, trying to show you where you're still holding on to some belief of inadequacy, right? So in the situations I just presented, someone you're dating starts dating somebody else. Whoop-de-doo. I'm not saying it's ideal. Maybe you really love that person. You saw a future with them. We all get trapped. We get attached. But what
and hurt.
And hurt. But the hurt is only because of the previous form of attachment. We associated that person with the source of love or the source of security, when in fact we are the source of love and the source of security. They may be the catalyst that turned it on for us, but it's not to be found in them, right? So the work is to see, okay, where do I get hurt? Where do I get upset? Where do I get triggered? Totally normal, no judgment. It's very human. But what can we investigate? Oh, is it true that I'm not enough? No, it's not a truth. I could feel that way, but it's not a truth. And then what I ask people is, in the absence of that, if that's gone, it's dissolved. It's impossible for you to look through a lens of inadequacy. How would you feel? And without doubt, 100%, everyone's like, oh, their shoulders drop, their breathing gets deeper. They're like, I'd feel amazing. I'd feel so free. And that's the work.
And how long, in your experience with the people you work with, how long does that last? Like, I'm sure that there's people
afterwards, you mean?
Yes.
It depends on the depth of understanding. And it also depends on the depth of the pattern in terms of its momentum, right? So I have a term I call flip-flopping, which is when I introduce people to this new world of freedom, they have to flip-flop between the current dynamic and the current dimension of survival, which is based in fear and constraint, between that one and the new world that I'm showing them. Now, that flip-flopping process can be instantaneous. Like if someone has a deep trauma, a deep scar, and we can really take it back, like trace it to an event when they were 5. And, you know, I can remember a woman I was talking to, she was from Europe, and when she was 5, they were building a new swimming pool in their garden. And so there was construction going on, and she was outside playing with the dog. And she got excited because she's a 5-year-old, and she pulled the dog's tail. The dog, because it's a dog, reacted, turned around and bit her face. Now, they had to go to the hospital. She had to get stitches. It was quite a traumatic experience for her, as you can imagine. A 5-year-old girl, it's very scary. Now I'm talking to her as a 44-year-old woman who's considering divorce, right? And she knows that the relationship is whatever, like, it's not in a great place. Anyway, I don't want to get into too many details, but she's in a place where she doesn't know what to do because she's scared she's going to make a mistake and do something wrong. Now, we traced it back to where the I'm doing something wrong started, which was when she pulled the dog's tail, she got bit in the face, and her parents, through no fault of their own, told her it was her fault. Even though she's going to the hospital, she's getting stitches, she's the one in pain, she was told it wasn't the dog's fault, it was your fault. Now, you could argue, okay, maybe it was good, but she's a 5-year-old. She was excited. She got, she was just being a kid. But then in her mind, she created the fear that she mustn't do anything wrong anymore in her life from 5 for the next 3-4 decades. So then that became the lens that she starts to analyze everything in her life because of something in her history that just formed the way that she perceives herself as somebody who it's her fault. So you can see in her relationship, she was concerned that if she ends the relationship, it triggers the same fear that she's the one that's doing something wrong and bad. So to come back to your question, that was pretty instantaneous. There was a lot of tears that came out. There was a lot of relief to realize, wow, I've never done anything wrong. I just pulled a dog's tail because I was a kid and I was excited. And if right now there are certain things in my life, like my relationship, that don't seem to work, there's nothing wrong about that. I have to honor what's true for me, because what's true for me is also true for him. And that's a very powerful thing for people to be able to realize, versus saying stuck in a quote unquote unhealthy situation where she's pretending everything's okay, but really what she's protecting is her fear of making a mistake, which is how many people live their lives. And it's saddening because it's exhausting and it's very unfulfilling. So I like to pop that bubble for people.
I love it. How much do you see, or do you have any stories, any cases that any examples of somebody who healed from some chronic disease that was lingering, and they tried a bunch of stuff, and then they had this conversation about the dog and the bite, and then boom, something clicked, and then whatever they had disappeared? Have you seen that?
Over and over and over, from the extremes of multiple sclerosis to Tell me a story. Well, I mean, people might have seen one of my podcasts that I did with Kerwin Ray, who's an Australian entrepreneur, an amazing guy. He came over to LA. It was actually his social media assistant, who I adore, a guy called Mateus, who introduced us. And he said, "You got to meet Peter Crone. He's blah, blah, blah. He's amazing." Like, very similar to you being very kind at the beginning of this, you know? So he's like, okay, he didn't really know me. But during the course of the interview, we got closer and closer to some stuff that was personal to him. And he had, what's it called? Some sort of dermatitis, perital dermatitis around his eyes. Like, basically, he had super, super red inflammation and a rash around either side of his eyes while we're doing the podcast. And so he got to the point where he said, well, what do you think about this in terms of like the physiology, or through the lens of Ayurveda, or emotional? And so I took him through the process. I said, well, it's a lot of heat. He's a pitta type. You know what pitta is, like a fire type. So I said, but there's also what I can feel is there's a lot of trapped hurt in your heart. You know, you're a very sensitive guy, but he's kind of a big dude, which is one of the ways that he'd protected himself over time. I said, but I can feel there's a lot of anger, which is, as an emotion, that's a lot of heat, right?
Peter.
And he's like, you're right. And I said, so tell me a little bit about what happened. And he said, well, it's funny because this theme for this year is relationships. And he's realized, he said, you know, I was married, I have a beautiful kid, but now it's an ex. And he said, my parents separated when I was a baby. I think he said 6 months old. And from that moment, I decided that I wasn't going to do it wrong. Like, I was going to wait and make sure that I got married and that I would do it right, right? That was his reaction to the trauma or the hurt of his parents separating when he was young. So I said, that's interesting. I said, so what does that say that you're saying about your parents' choice to divorce? And he realized, well, it means that that was bad or it was wrong. And I said, okay, interesting. So now you've got a subjective opinion over reality, which happens all the time. And you've been carrying that for 4 decades as a serious judgment. And now you're putting pressure on yourself to try and make sure that you don't repeat what your parents did. That's a lot of friction. And he started to presence it. He started to cry, which was beautiful, another release. And I said, you're putting so much pressure on yourself to not do what happened in history, which, by the way, is impossible to reconcile because it's already happened. And so during the course of that, there was a lot of heat. He started sweating. All of this heat was coming out. Now, the powerful part, and to your question, even at the end of the interview, some of this started to dissipate. Now, because they're so cool in the way they capture everything for him on social media, the next day, well, actually, even that evening, they went to dinner and they did a before and after, and they were looking at the skin around his eyes, and about 70% of it had already gone. The next day, he came to my house as a surprise. He was wearing sunglasses so he could do this reveal, and it was down to about 5 or 10%. And then within 2 or 3 days, it had all gone, because what he recognized is that was an expression of heat. Physiologically, that was associated with the emotional friction, judgment, criticism, and trauma, which was also expressing as anger, the body was trying to release, but he had released it emotionally. Now, where it gets even more powerful, within about a week of that being put on air, I got the most beautiful DM from a woman who'd had psoriasis for years. She said she listened to that, she watched it, she cried so heavily about all the judgment she carried in her life about her own history, different circumstances, but it's the same energy of making life wrong and all the guilt from your history. And she said her psoriasis disappeared. As someone I've never even met. I mean, I can't claim, like, that's just me sharing something with someone on a podcast. You know, that's how powerful the reframe of your mind is on the impact on your body.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of words as medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So many people can hear them as opposed to pills that you have to swallow, you know?
Which, if you take pills, but you live within the same construct of programming that creates the disease that you're taking
the pill for,
you're not going anywhere anyway.
They may not even work.
This is like why I love making the metaphor, the correlation between our mind and a computer. Somebody who is incredible at code, like really incredible at coding, you know, like we're here on Instagram, somebody there is, you know, designed Instagram Live and all the algorithms and all of that, right? Brilliant people who know how to computer program. But let's just say, for whatever reason, there's a little bit of a, you know, there's an error in the programming, which means that why do we keep glitching here? Why is this not a smooth feed? Because the code, there's a glitch in the writing. So think about that same thing, but in our own mind. If we have programming that is based in some insecurity, some inadequacy, then we are going to generate glitches, which is upset, fear, frustration, depression, anxiety. They are just symptoms of poor programming. So that's why I'm helping people reveal the programming, seeing there's nothing wrong with them. By the way, I hope everyone gets that. There's nothing wrong with you. You might have the thought that there's something wrong with you, but it's a thought. It's not a truth. And once you reconcile that, boy, is it a different world to live in. And that's why people are like...
That guy with the red in the eye and around the eyes, did he stay married?
No, he had already separated, which is why he had even more judgment.
Oh, I thought you said he was considering divorce.
That's because he didn't get it right. I didn't get it right. And this is where people put so much pressure on themselves. They don't embrace their humanity. Yeah.
So I mean, this mechanism must be the cause of so many divorces, right? And so much human suffering, right? But
relationships are the #1 topic that I probably speak to, because people don't know how to relate because they're reacting. They're not listening, which is going back to what I said earlier when I was talking about Aggie, and she said, I need to change the way my mind is talking to myself, because in her case, she's saying it's very negative or critical. I was like, no, you have to learn to listen. If I have a superpower, it's learning how to listen. I listen to people, but I don't take it like gospel. Like if somebody says something like, you know, hey, you're a genius, or like you said, a very flattering introduction. Okay, that sounds really nice. But if somebody also had a criticism, I can listen just as freely because it's just their opinion. So in relationships, why relationships don't work is because people don't know how to listen. They just react from their own deep-seated fears of inadequacy. So they really end up protecting themselves. We have survival mechanisms, right? It's like, you know, we defend ourselves about somebody criticizing us or making us wrong.
That's your psychological and emotional and immune system, right?
Yes, exactly. Emotional intelligence is the ability to be with whatever somebody's saying, but unaffected by it. That's why I said that's the most powerful and free human being. Now, it takes work. I'm not saying this is easy. I've been doing this for decades. It's second nature to me to be able to just be with life, even this COVID thing or whatever's happening. It's okay. It's not ideal. There's stuff to handle, but there's no emotional upset.
Yeah. Since you talk with people about relationships and you help them in that realm, I want to know what you think about this practice, which is worldwide now, which is people have lists of you know, when they think about the partner, that attract your partner and make a list, you know, and then he has to be my friend, he has to be funny, he has to be secure, he has to be emotionally available, and this is, and what do you think about this list? I think that's a setting yourself up for disaster.
Here's the good news: you can't do it wrong. Here's the really good news. Make a list, don't make a list, it doesn't matter. Why? You are going to attract exactly the person you need for your spiritual evolution. That's how, this is so beautiful. When you understand life, you can't fuck it up. It's always going to give you what you need for your own awakening. Everybody's got their own personal dimension they're living in. Yes, we all live on the planet, but you will attract the job, the partner, the family, you know, the friends that you need to trigger what is unreconciled in you. So if you're somebody who likes to make a list, great, make a list. You're still going to attract the person who's going to push all your buttons.
Knocks your socks off, right? Make a list.
It doesn't matter. If you're somebody who goes by the seat of your pants and you like to pick up someone in Whole Foods, do that, because you are the one who's working on you. It's not about the relationship. We are each a mirror for one another. You have a partner right now, or you don't have a partner right now. You have a spouse, a husband. It doesn't really matter. When you get triggered, it's because you have the right person to help you reconcile what you still are holding on to that's holding you back in life. So it's a beautiful question, but don't worry about it.
I see so many hearts that people are sending you in the comments here. I'm sure that women are going crazy and thinking that you are the ideal boyfriend or husband. Right?
I'm not wearing any pants, so it's not that either.
Are you in a relationship?
I'm in relationships with everyone.
With everyone, but I'm in a, you know, in the classic one-on-one.
Well, right now I live in my house by myself for apparently the next 3 or 4 years, so it's a little difficult. But I do date. I have some very special partners in my life, and you know, nothing serious. My passion is my work right now. So
and that's pretty evident. Now, were you born free, or this is something that you had to learn and fight for? And
born free?
Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, this is the way I put it. We're all born free, right? Like, look at kids. They're so free. Like, they'll throw up on your Prada dress. They don't care. Like, you know, they scream. They go up to someone and say, hey, why are you fat? Like, there's the unfiltering, right? So I would assert our true nature is free, but then we develop fear. We develop limitation. We develop insecurity. So yes, I was born free like everybody else, but then believe me, I had my insecurities. I always had to be perfect growing up. It was so tiring because I was so scared that I wasn't enough, just like a lot of people. But then I realized I'd made all of that up. It was not a truth. And that's how I became free. And this freedom I have now is real freedom because it's conscious freedom, whereas a kid, it's unconscious freedom. So meaning they're not aware of it.
When was the last time that you were, you know, insecure and telling yourself how stupid you are and things like that?
Summer of 1958.
50.
I'm just making shit up. Gosh,
in your 20s, in your 30s.
When I was last time I was triggered. How long have we got? I'm gonna have to think. I mean, listen.
So let me ask you a different question.
Okay.
When you were there, when you were in turmoil, right?
Yes.
What was your how did you open the way? Where did you start? You know, I started
by my own heartache, because like I said earlier, life will give you. I'll come back to that question. I'm going to give you one example. One of my clients was going to go and see his family for Thanksgiving. He was not married, but he was with a woman and they had a child. Now, his family, very, very traditional Catholic. All of his siblings, big family, they all were married with kids. He was not married, so he's the black sheep, right? Now, the relationship was not going well. And so he didn't know what to do because they were going to Thanksgiving. He said, if I go with her and the baby, then everyone will assume everything's fine, and it's not. But if I don't go with her, with the baby, then everyone will assume that there's a problem, which there is, but then I look terrible because we're not married and I have a baby and we're about to separate, right? And I said to him, you're missing the point. It's got nothing to do with whether you go with her or you don't go with her. What it's showing you is that you're not free with your own family. You don't feel intimacy in terms of a loving, harmonious relationship with your family. That's the issue. You feel like you're not accepted by your family. That's what's to work on, right? So that's the case study. Come back to me. Where I found freedom was I fell in love, I thought, with a woman many, many years ago. This is going back to 2000, 2001, which is when I had my big, quote unquote, you know, what do we call it, awakening.
Was this the rock star?
She was dating a rock star.
No, no.
Yeah, I was not a rock star. Still not
No,
a
no,
rock
no,
star.
no. You were dating quite a high profile woman in one of your stories I heard.
I mean, she was dating a rock star. She wasn't necessarily high profile. But anyway, it's immaterial. What I'm saying is, like, life gave me what I needed to look at, which was the fear of loss. My parents died when I was very young. So part of my fear mechanism, my survival patterns, don't lose anything that is valuable, right? Like money, parents, someone you love. So she was that next version. My parents had died. So the next form of value to me was a girlfriend that I was in love with, right? That's normal. So I'd become attached to her, thinking that was where my love was coming from, which was the illusion. So she left me, which was life setting me up. Now, this is the thing I want you to understand. It wouldn't have mattered if it was her or Tom, Dick, or Harry. You know, it could have been another girl. I was the one that had to deal with my fear of loss. So if it was somebody else, they would have left me at some point too. Why? Because I needed to let go of my fear of loss.
So how did you pick yourself up? Was it a course? Like, you know, a lot of people do the Landmark Forum. Other people do ayahuasca.
Yeah.
You know, what was it for you?
I just drank a shit ton of gin. No, I'm kidding. I did a bunch of things. I had great friends around me. I loved reading. You know, I've done different courses. I have, you know, everything from astrologers to spiritual intuitives that I've spoken to through my life. I'm familiar with the Landmark work. I think they do great work. Hoffman is another place. I've never done that. But there's great resources for people. I just happen to have one of those minds that is able to reflect on itself. It's like my mind can fold back and analyze, sort of in an analysis of itself. So I can remember sitting in my rent control apartment at the time, and I realized, holy shit, the fears that I had, like with this girl, like, is she going to come back? Is she with somebody else? Will I ever see her again? Will I ever meet anyone else again? Am I going to be okay? All of these questions that had so much fear and anxiety around them, I got the answer to all of them. Just sitting there, it was, I don't know. I don't know, Alejandro. I don't know the answer. And for the first time in my life, I was totally okay not knowing, and that was freedom. Because this thing, the protect and predict mechanism of our brain so that we can survive, which is a formative power, and it's helpful, but it leaves us constantly analyzing and trying to figure out the future. And it's exhausting. And at that moment, for the first time in my life, 20 years ago, I stopped trying to figure it out.
And what books helped you in your early steps?
Oh my gosh, I got so many. My first guy was Krishnamurti. You know Krishnamurti?
Yes.
Beautiful teacher. He from India, but then I think he settled in Ojai, very close up the street. Krishnamurti, then Ramana Maharshi. So a lot of the traditional Indian gurus. And then Srinivasa Gadata, which is a mouthful. He was one of the lineages of Advaita Vedanta too. And I loved he has a book called I Am That, which if you were to see my copy of I Am That, it's so dog-eared and torn, and it's probably got 3 or 4 books in it just from all my scribbles. So they were some of my favorite books. But then there's some more contemporary books that I've really enjoyed too. You know, some of the more traditional authors. Michael Singer, he wrote The Untethered Soul. I think that's a beautiful book.
Mark Epstein.
Pardon?
Mark Epstein, you know, Thoughts Without a Thinker.
No. And I love movies. Like The Matrix, to me, you know, if you really understand The Matrix, that's a documentary. It's not a film. Like, I have clients even watch The Matrix, and I'll say to them, don't watch it. I want you to listen to it. Because it's easy to get caught up in all the special effects. But what's actually being said is so profound.
Yeah.
And that was made so long ago. Those guys knew what they were talking about.
And let me ask you, have you ever met a living master, an enlightened being, apart from the one in the mirror?
From you? Huh? No, I haven't. Not in real life. Like, not somebody that I would consider to be someone that I look up to through that lens of reverence or respect. I'd also... You know, it may sound a little bit cliche and poetic, but I like to look at everybody like that. You know, like true namaste is to recognize the divinity within everybody. So I would like to give myself some compliment that I do treat everybody as though they are a reflection of the divine. Now, what they have in the way of that, in terms of their own fears, their own inadequacies, that's what we got to polish and remove, shall we say, you know? So I haven't met anybody that I feel has done all of the work. I mean, I have some pretty extraordinary friends, but I think we're all a work in progress, you know, myself included. I still can't fly, so I've still got some work to do.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, listen, I could speak to you all day, but
Yeah.
we're running close, and
Okay.
and I really enjoy speaking with you, and I hope to see you around soon, man.
I hope so, my friend. And I want to, just for your viewers, because it's fun to do this. This is only the third time I've done a live. Like, you know, I have my Free Your Minds course online right now, which a lot of people said they wanted me to reopen so they could look at it during this time. But we did it with Aggie, and it was so much fun. So if anyone listening wants to take a little video of us right now, or take a screenshot, and they share it, then we're going to pick someone who randomly, or it's an inspiring story, and I'm going to give someone the course.
And you know what? You inspired me, so I'm going to give whoever that is, or maybe somebody else.
No, give someone else, yeah.
Someone else a kit to do the Clean 7 program.
Let's go. We're cleaning mind and body right there, right?
Yes,
yeah. So
yes.
just screenshot, videos, share the story, tag me and Dr. Alejandro, and we'll just share the love. And if people want to learn more about my stuff, I also created a free content page, which is just petercrone.com/live for these live events. So you can go and watch some more videos.
I'll tell you a story.
I
went end of February. I went to India, to Rishikesh, to the International Yoga Festival.
Yeah.
And I went with a group of people that have an organization called Uplift, that is trying to really change the field of consciousness by putting people to meditate together. There's a few of these, but this group of people are amazing. And Bruce Lipton was one of the teams, and I got to spend a lot of time with him. But there were in Rishikesh 3 enlightened beings, or so people understand. One, Pujya Swamiji, another one, Anand Mehrotra, and another one, Muji. Have you heard of Muji?
Of course, yeah.
And you know, I was fascinated, and I mean, right up my alley. I was listening to everything and watching them like hawks, right? Yeah. And I got to actually meet them and spend time with them. And then I'm sitting there random at night, and there were thousands of people. And somebody, oh, you're from America, you know, and I love what you, because they came to my lecture, and they said to me, you know who I love on Instagram from America? I said, what? Peter Crone.
I'm huge in India.
Yeah, all the way in Rishikesh, man. You're
That's amazing.
You're reaching, and I'm proud of you, and I love what you do, and I'm gonna keep on listening.
Thank you, my friend. I just want to thank you for having me on. You're such a beautiful soul. I wish we got to spend more time together, but we will soon.
Let's do it.
And I just want to acknowledge you for your commitment. You know, like when we first met, like there's something about you. Your eyes are amazing. So you talk about like a hawk. You have eyes like a hawk. But I love your commitment to this work, right? I love the fact that you bring me on here, that hopefully we brought some value to your audience and to many people. But I really acknowledge you for how passionate you are for making a difference in people's lives. It's a beautiful quality. So thank you.
Thank you. You know, a lot of my friends, they love to follow rock stars or bands. You know, they're rock star groupies, right?
Yeah.
I'm a healer groupie.
Yes.
Whenever I see one, I want to meet them. I want to see what they do. I want to experience what they do. And if possible, I want to learn to do what they do.
Amazing. Well, I'm happy to be the spiritual rock star. I'm the spiritual rock star. You can be my groupie. But you're not coming back to the green room with me, buddy. Not my style. Okay.
Love you, man. Everyone. See you soon.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.